Morning, gang. It's a chilly November morning here in Georgia. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to those of you that I probably won't see tomorrow. Pretty sure of that one. But anyway, what I'm working on today is a 2001 Toyota Highlander 3.0 V6 all-wheel drive, and my friend had taken it to whatever tire shop and have them rotate the tires, and of course they look things over and they want to tell you if there's problems. Whether they actually look at things, I don't know, but in this case they told him he had a problem with the axle, and he does actually. This thing is leaking fluid, and the vehicle has 240 or 50 or 60,000 miles on it, and they recommended he change that axle. Now they quoted him $199 parts and labor, and he asked me if I could do it for less. I said sure. So I contacted Rock Auto and I ordered a brand new axle. Now this thing shipped, I think the total was $54 or $58, but it is a brand new axle, and this company is Frost & Sullivan, and of course, you know, this is your Rock Auto tape and junk, but I'm going to replace this axle. So to start with, I jacked the vehicle up using the cradle. Now this is the assembly here that supports the engine and all the suspension, and I did that because by jacking it there I can drop the suspension here, the lower control arm, and give me more room to work with. And what I'm going to do, just to make it simple for me, is I'm going to remove the caliper, because I'm trying to get rid of some of the weight and bulk that I have to deal with up here. So I'm going to take the caliper off, the bracket off, and the rotor. And I'll take the caliper off. It has two 14mm bolts, and I'm also going to remove this 12mm bolt right here, because that's holding the brake hose. And I'm going to take the caliper and rotate it up and safety wire it to this spring, and it just gets it out of my way. Then I'll remove the bracket, and it has two 17mm bolts. There's one right there, and get those out of the way, and then of course the rotor assembly, and then I'll continue from there. So let me get that pulled apart and continue on. Okay, I've got those pieces out of the way. That's the bracket, the rotor, and the pads, of course, and there's the caliper hanging by what I actually used was some welding wire that I had from when I changed my last spool. Now the plan is to remove this nut, and that is a 30mm, and if you look, you see this little groove cut in the axle shaft, and right here is a flange of the nut. And what that is, that's a lock. When you put the nut on, you take a punch and you drive that into that groove, and it helps keep the lock from, or the nut from, coming loose. So I'm going to take that off and also remove these two bolts, and that's a 22mm, and in doing so that'll separate the knuckle assembly from the strut, and I'll be able to rotate that out, and it should be able to let the axle stay in place basically, but it would slide in, and we'll see if there's enough clearance to where I can get that out of the way, and then the axle will move to the back, and then I'll work on removing it from the transmission. Okay, being that this vehicle is originally from up north, it probably had some salt, and you know, harsh weather creates some rust. So I took my chisel and I drove it into this groove, top and bottom, let's say, and weakened the little flange on the nut. And as I did that, it separated pretty nice. So what I did is I walked the chisel, took it all the way around, and you can see the remaining piece right there. Now I'll take the chisel and I'll finish knocking that off. What that'll do is it will help separate the nut a little bit, and hopefully the jarring action of the hammer will loosen up some of the rust. But I'll knock that piece off, that little piece, and then I'll hit it with the impact and see what happens. Okay, so I removed the two bolts from up in the strut to the assembly, and I got the big nut off the axle. Then I took a hammer and I gently hit the end of the axle, so I know it's already loose. And now I'll pull this assembly apart. I should be able to push that axle out. Got to fight with it a little bit. But there it is. Now I'll show you the next part here in just a second. Now on the other end of the axle, you've got this little kind of a snap ring, and that's what holds the axle into the transmission or transaxle, however you want to label it. So I'm going to come behind this flange right here on the old one with a screwdriver and pop it to get this to release. And that's it. Pull on it, and there it is, the same ring that I said earlier. And now I'll just reverse the process. So I'm going to install a new axle, and the splines all line up. There's no particular direction it needs to go, but you got to get that little snap ring to drop in place. So I'm going to take a mallet and tap it in from the end, and that sets the new axle in place. Now what I'll do is reverse my process just like I took it apart. I'll feed the axle end back into the hub assembly, push it up, and then reconnect my strut and continue on from there. Okay, so I've set the hub back up in place, and I have it lined up in the strut. Now this can be a little bit tricky here because there's the natural tendency of the lower control arm is to come up. So I don't know if you can see or not, but there's the holes don't line up directly. So what I'll end up doing is taking a screwdriver and working my way into the hole. I may even take a larger screwdriver and come into this hole. And in doing so, that helps me line up the bolt, and then I can put in the second bolt as well, and just have to play with it a little bit, but it'll go in. And so I'll get those two bolts in place, tighten them up, and of course tighten up the nut on the end of the axle, and do the same thing like I showed earlier, where I take the in this groove and take a punch and drive that in after it's completely tight. Well, that finishes up this job. When I installed the bolts, I put Loctite on those. Of course, I reinstalled the bolt that held the hose and all the assembly of the caliper bracket and caliper and rotor, and I bent that tab in like I talked about after I tightened the nut, and I think that'll take care of this job. So again, it's the day before Thanksgiving, so I will say happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for watching.